Hello and welcome back to episode 2 of the Mixed Martial Pod. Today it's going to be a bit of a longer one. You've probably seen that from looking at the actual thumbnail and length of the video. But today we've got a few things to go over. Going to make this one a bit longer than the last one because that was a bit of a test episode. But I'm going to jump straight into it and get to talking about UFC 291. So, I think there's a lot of things that UFC 291 brings into the conversation. There's a lot of matches it brings into the conversation. There's a lot of matchups it brings into the conversation. And there's also a couple of titles that really ride on what happens at this event this weekend. So first of all, we have the light heavyweight title. So obviously, I spoke about that previously in the previous pod. Previously. But we have Jan Blachowicz and Alex Pereira fighting this weekend. It is not for the light heavyweight title. That did not come to fruition, being made into a vacant title match. It stays as a 3-round bout, and it's going to be a number one contenders match from what we seem to have heard. Not only has it been confirmed by a lot of people, a lot of trustworthy sources, but they've been saying it at the press conference right in front of Dana. So I don't think there's any real question to that claim. For the lightweight title, we have the BMF fight this weekend, and that's Dustin Poirier and Justin Gaethje, who both want a piece of Islam Makhachev. I think that they deserve the shot at Islam Makhachev, but I think that there's a lot going on there if we're going to be talking about Dustin, Justin, Islam, and Volkanovski. And Oliveira, sorry. Five people there, all in the contention for that title. It's tough. It's a tough position. So we now have confirmed that Oliveira and Islam are fighting at UFC 294 in October. Co-main evented by Chimaev and Costa, might I add, but I'll dive into that soon. With this, if we see Charles win, look, I'm not even going to bother trying to explain what would happen then, because that throws a huge wrench in the mix. Keeping the lightweight division rolling and moving efficiently is pretty much all weighted on the hope that Islam wins this fight. Because if he doesn't, everything is going to move so slowly. And that's not necessarily a horrific thing, but it's a fact. If Oliveira wins, we have so many people for rematches with each other, as well as people that have been promised number one contender fights, and it would get ropey. So if that does happen, it will be interesting, because I'd fucking love Oliveira to be champion again. But in the instance that Islam wins, which is what everybody seems to be already assuming will be the case, do we see Volk versus Islam 2, or do we see Islam versus Dustin or Justin? It's a big throw up right now. Volkanovski claims now, I think he was really hoping that he would get to fight Islam again right after his match with Rodriguez Yair. But it's looking like we actually are going to get Volkanovski versus Topuria. And that might happen this year. It might not. But I think with the weight that Volk has been given due to the Oliveira match being made with Islam, I don't think he wants to wait. I don't think he wants to sit around for like 8 to 9 months waiting until the next year rolls around and we start to get the early 2024 cards announced. I don't think he wants to wait that long. I believe, quoting Volkanovski, he says he wants to fight in December. So if that's the case, there's only a few cards left this year. So there's only a couple of spots actually available to put title matches on. And there's a lot of title matches that we're waiting to happen. So I'm not sure how many two title fight events we're going to be getting this year, because we might get a bunch. I say a bunch, I mean, I'm talking 2, but we might be getting 2. UFC 295 being Jones and Stipe could supposedly be also on that card. We could also be getting Leon versus Colby. Not confirmed, but rumored heavily, and also have been waiting a long time and haven't heard anything about that. So what's to say that's not going to happen? As for the last card of the year, 296 in December, Volkanovski says he wants to fight on that card against Topuria, which I would like to see too. I'd love to see that fight this year. But that is also the card that is the rumored red panty night when Conor McGregor and Chandler are meant to fight. It's so up in the air whether that's happening with the whole USADA deal. Even Conor McGregor's coach is saying that they're not so sure that he'll fight this year. So if we don't get that McGregor-Chandler fight, I think Volkanovski might be headlining UFC 296. That's totally possible. But I've devoted pretty hard, so I'll take a step back, return to UFC 291. Dustin and Justin. If these guys put on a show, which they will, it's going to happen. There's no question about that. Are we not incorrect in denying them the next shot? Because Volk just had the shot, and trust me, I think Volk won that last fight. So I'm a very big proponent for, I don't even know if that's the right word, but I'm a very big pusher for Volk and Islam rematch immediately, because Volkanovski will win. That's my thought. Islam stands a chance, obviously, but Volkanovski won the first fight. Don't chat to me. He won the first fight, so I think it's entirely possible that he wins the second one. But I would give Islam a better chance in the second fight than I would in the first one, to be honest. Hindsight's 2020, obviously. I gave Islam a huge chance against Volk prior to seeing the fight. But after seeing the fight, I think in the second match, Islam's going to have a way better chance. Because Volk fucking crushed his game. Like, there was nothing that Islam had that Volk couldn't defend against, or at least battle to a good degree. So it will be interesting whether we get Dustin and Justin versus Islam, or Volk versus Islam, or if Oliveira wins, like I said, it's a spanner in the mix. So we'll have to see. Light heavyweight title, lightweight title this weekend. We will find out, and we will know, or maybe not even know, but we'll know who is going to be the person considered between those two possible matches, whether it's going to be Dustin or Justin, and whether it's going to be Blachowicz or Pereira that is going to fight for the light heavyweight title against supposedly Yuri Prochazka. I believe that's not confirmed, but I don't know if that's what should happen. If Yuri's back, right? He should be fighting for the title immediately. However, I don't know if it should be against Blachowicz and Pereira. I don't know. If Yuri is not back, sure. They should definitely be fighting for the title, because the winner of Blachowicz and Pereira should be fighting Ankalaev for the title. But if Prochazka does come back, I don't know if Blachowicz and Pereira should be given the shot, because Ankalaev should be given the shot. Because Ankalaev won against Blachowicz. He beat Blachowicz. I don't care if you want to call it a draw. It was a close fight, obviously controversial. There is ways that you could say that you saw Jan to win the fight, okay? And this is an issue that's happening a lot recently, it's the way that MMA scoring works, okay? So according to the judges, somebody would win the fight, right? The judges will say this person won the fight because of this, because they won these rounds here. That's not how it works, man. That's not how you tell someone that you beat the shit out of that guy. Numbers. Like, at least not a 9 and 10. That's not how you equate a brawl, okay? You take into account all the numbers, including the statistics of the strikes and takedowns and takedown defense and whatnot. And when you go and look at Ankalaev versus Blachowicz, Ankalaev won distinctively. Blachowicz definitely didn't win. I can see why a draw was given, because it's obviously possible that would happen. But none of the judges' scorecards made sense. They all got it wrong. They all had the wrong rounds listed for the wrong people. But that's a long time ago, 6 months ago. What I'm saying is that because of that, I believe Ankalaev is more deserving of the next shot than Blachowicz is. Even if Blachowicz beats Pereira, I don't like... If Blachowicz beats Pereira, the only reason that I see Blachowicz being the next title contender is if it's a rematch against Ankalaev, because I don't see any universe where Blachowicz deserves to be given the title shot before Ankalaev does. I don't, because a lot of people saw that fight, and a lot of people immediately said what they thought, and it was that Ankalaev won. So, Pereira wins, Ankalaev versus Pereira, sure. Yuri versus Pereira, sure. Either are fine. Blachowicz wins, he can't fight Yuri. That can't happen. He can fight Ankalaev, sure, but he can't fight Yuri. That's not fair to Ankalaev at all. At all. moving on. That's going to do it for... Actually, I'll move on to 291, staying on topic for that event. But moving on from the conversation about titles. We've got a couple of really, really, really interesting... not main events, sorry. Bouts on this event. There was the removed bout, which would have been very interesting. If I remember correctly, it was... Sorry guys, just a bit hot, had to take my jumper off. The event that I was thinking of is Paulo Costa versus Ikram Aliskerov. So that was taken off of the UFC 291 card. But the rest of the fights are looking juicy. So, first up, below Jan Blachowicz and Alex Pereira, we have Stephen Thompson versus Michael Pereira. Awesome. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing his name right. It could be different to actually Alex Pereira's name though. And below that, we have Tony Ferguson versus Bobby Green. Awesome. Really hoping that Tony can break this streak here. Otherwise, it's a good comeback for Bobby Green after a couple of rough matches. Below that, we have Michael Chiesa versus Kevin Holland, which I am quite surprisingly excited for. Michael Chiesa is it's not someone I dislike, but he's not a guy that I've watched a whole lot of. I've seen the whole Ultimate Fighter come up story and a couple of other fights. But yeah, I'm quite excited to see him against Kevin Holland, especially because Kevin Holland's technically not ranked anymore, and Chiesa still is ranked. So we'll see. This will be a bit of a turning point for Holland. If Holland loses this fight, it might get interesting because Kevin Holland has quite a good resume on him for a guy that's has quite a lot of losses too. He has a great year in 2020 and 2021, I believe. But that didn't come without any losses. It still definitely came with trials and tribulations. But we'll see. We'll see. It'll be a good show off for both those guys, and we'll see what the welterweight division is really made of. Alright, actually moving on from UFC 291 now. So, we're going to jump into UFC 293. Australia, finally getting another card that is not in Perth, out in Whoop Whoop land. I really wanted to go to this one, but unfortunately the tickets all sold out really quickly, so I wasn't able to get any. But I will still be covering the fight as per usual. There's not a confirmed main event, which is a very sticky situation when you're 5 weeks out from a fight. We don't even know who's technically meant to be the main event. We think it's meant to be Izzy, but there's no... Aside from the fighters themselves talking with Sean Strickland doing interviews and Izzy chatting about it on his Twitter or Instagram, the UFC said nothing. Zilch. Absolutely nothing. Not even a suggestion. So I think it's they're trying to keep it under wraps right now, I feel like. Because it's a sticky situation, man. They're at a very close to a very big card that was meant to have the main event locked in before UFC 290 was even finished. Because they were meant to see DDP versus Rob and know who was going to fight there. But DDP pulled out and Rob can't fight after a loss. Especially after it was a bad loss and he wants to take a break. So, I think it's going to be really interesting. I think that... I'm calling it now. Because I don't see any other options. I reckon Jared Cannonier is going to jump in. And we're going to get Cannonier versus Adesanya 2. I can't see any other way that goes down. If I take a look at the rankings in the middleweight division, I don't think there's anyone besides Strickland and Cannonier that are currently available to fight, that could fight Adesanya. If we have a look at the rankings, right? We go to the middleweight rankings. You've got your number one is Dricus du Plessis. Number two, Alex Pereira. Both those guys cannot fight right now. Robert Whittaker, number 3, cannot fight right now. Number 4, Jared Cannonier, can fight right now and has said that he would be willing to take Sean's place. He said that in an interview. I don't know whether he said that specifically or if he said that he thought Sean was kind of stealing his spotlight where he could have made the jump into that spot. I think that might have been closer to what he was trying to say. But still, Cannonier, huge possibility. Number 5, Marvin Vettori. Just lost to Cannonier, wouldn't make much sense to choose him over Cannonier. Number 6, Sean Strickland. We know that he's not going to be doing the fight anymore, at least I believe so. I think there's been way too much chat about it online. If any of you guys watch Chael Sonnen, you would know Chael seems very convinced that he's also not going to be Sean. It's just not looking like it's going to happen. There's too many things that are lining up in the sense that it's a no. So we have to assume it's a no. And then at that point, we're looking at number 7, you don't take title fights down to the number 7 and number 8 people. Number 7 is Paulo Costa who is fighting already against Chimaev at 294. And number 8 is Derek Brunson, who we can't put Derek Brunson up after a loss. His last fight was a loss, right? You can't put someone into a title fight after they lost their last fight to Dricus du Plessis. That's right. He lost to Dricus du Plessis, and the fight before that, he lost to Jared Cannonier. So you absolutely need to choose Jared Cannonier. I don't think there's any other option. If Jared Cannonier is not Adesanya's opponent, I do not think we will be seeing Israel Adesanya fight in Australia in September. I don't know who the fuck they're going to make the main event because it's a pay-per-view event. But if it's not Jared Cannonier, it won't be easy either. That's what I see. I don't see any other way that could go down efficiently without them pulling someone from number 8 or below, which is insane. And I don't know if it's ever even been done before. At least not for a title fight. A main event possibly, but not for a title fight. Especially, I believe, has Brunson fought Adesanya before? I feel like Brunson might have fought Adesanya before. And if he has, then that's not fair at all. Especially because Cannonier's fought him before. And granted, the Cannonier fight was also a bit iffy. So, it's a sticky stitch. The whole division is just in a bit of shambles, honestly. So, like I said, light heavyweight is pretty much just waiting on that fight at UFC 291 to kind of get everything together. And middleweight is waiting on whatever's going to happen at 293, but we don't even know who it's going to be. So it's a different situation. A light heavyweight, at least we know who is going to be in this conversation. We're just waiting for a decider out of these two guys. But at 185, we don't even know what names we're considering. Like, we know that there's too many people lined up for a title shot, yet none of them can fight for the title right now. Crazy. I can't, like, it's hard to wrap your head around. A lot of these divisions are being very, very held up this year, which is weird to say because 2023 has been a great year for the UFC. They had some incredible events, some great. They went to some awesome places for events because after COVID, it's been a long time since they've been to a lot of these different countries. I think they haven't been to Brazil in ages. I don't think that they've been to, before they went to Canada for UFC 289. I don't think they'd been to Canada in ages. So like, there's plenty of places that's like really, really out of the market right now for the UFC almost. So it's gonna be iffy. We just really got to wait. And I guess the next UFC 291 and then also the next couple of weeks of news about UFC 293 will tell a lot for the light heavyweight, middleweight, and lightweight divisions. Until then, we don't know. There's a lot of contentions with the title. Anyway, more about 293, regardless of the title fight. We do have a couple of awesome fights listed for that event, which I'm fucking ecstatic for. First of all, Tuivasa versus Alexander Volkov. I love my boy Bam Bam, but God, this is going to be a fucking nutty fight. If any of you have seen Tai Tuivasa versus Stefan Struve, granted Stefan wasn't the most technical and skilled fighter, we've seen Tai fuck up tall guys. Because Tai is tall, but he's not heavyweight tall. That's the thing. He's pretty average height for the division. And Volkov is 6'7", I think. If he's not 6'7", he's 6'6". And Ty's like 6'2", I think. So that's a huge advantage in height. But like I just said, Stefan Struve was 6'11", I think. And Ty knocked him out. So I would love to see Ty break. He's not necessarily on a streak right now, but he's going through a bit of a rough period. I'd love to see him snap that. And it's going to be hard for Tuivasa to climb up the heavyweight rankings again. Because I feel like we've seen a bit of his skill cemented with a couple of the matchups, like Garn, which was a great fight. I'd like to say it was a great fight. Among other guys in the top 5 area, I think Tuivasa will have a really hard time beating some of those guys. Like, Tuivasa could not beat John Jones. Like, that's that's funny to think about. See, if I ever saw Tai Tuivasa and John Jones in an event, I'd pay thousands of dollars to go see that. I'd pay thousands of dollars to watch it on a 144p screen. That doesn't make any sense. I don't see how that could happen, but they're in the same division and they're like 6 spots apart. So It's just a weird division, so anything can happen all the time. We see heavyweights fucking cause upsets because they're big and they've all got one punch power, so size doesn't actually always play the factor, you know? So I am going to be keen for that one. Next at 293, we have Kai Kara France versus Manel Cape. I believe that's how you pronounce his name. This one, I'm not going to stick on it too long because I don't want to sound sour speaking about it, but this fight shouldn't be happening. I'm excited. I'm very excited because it's a cool opportunity for Manel, and it's going to be awesome to see Kai fight again, especially in Australia. But this fight shouldn't be happening. I've written in my notes here, don't shit on this fight, but I'm going to shit on it. This fight shouldn't be happening. Manel Cape should be fighting Amir Albazi, and Kai Kara France should currently be ranked number 3, and he should be in consideration between him and Brandon Royval for the next title shot against Alexander Pantoja. Because I talk a bit about robberies and bad scoring and bad results of fights. Kara France versus Albazi might be one of the worst instances of robbery I've ever watched in the UFC. Go back and watch that fight. And go look at the stats. Pull up UFCstats.com and go watch that fight. Look at the round-to-round statistics. Round 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Look at all the striking statistics. Thrown and landed with accuracy. Okay? Look at significant strike difference. Look at takedown and control time difference. Look at all of it and watch the fight. And try and tell me that Amir Albazi won that fight. Because it didn't happen. It did not happen. It wasn't even close. It wasn't even close. I've made a video on that. If you want, you can go watch that. You'll be able to. It'll be short. It'll only be about 10 minutes. You won't have to watch the entire fight, and you'll be able to get my opinion on it. So I'll because I've made that video, I will digress from chatting about it too much. But that's Amir Albazi is not ranked number 3. He should be down where Kai Kara France is, and he should be facing Manel Cape because he should be fighting down. Kara France should not be fighting down because he won his last fight. He did. The judges said he lost it, but he won the fight. He beat Amir Albazi. He bested him. He outworked him. And he has better skill than him. So, hopefully, Kara France can win this and boost himself back up into the rankings and then be back in contention to be fighting with Pantoja, Moreno, and Brandon Royval. And I really hope that as much... I don't mean this because I dislike Amir Albazi. But I hope that something happens that allows Amir Albazi to drop ranking, because it might be fucked up to say that I want someone else to lose, but I think it's less fucked up than what happened to Kai. Insane. So I think, respect to Albazi, I don't want to see him beat up, but I want to see him ranked below Kai Kara France, because that is how rankings work. When someone beats someone, you get ranked above them. And when someone beats someone, you do not say the other person won. So I'll move on because I don't want to talk about this forever. But, man, Kai Kara France would be awesome to see. Hopefully he wins against Cape. Even an Albazi rematch would be fucking cool, because if Albazi beats him in the rematch, sure, I'll take back everything. Because then he deserves it. But right now he doesn't deserve it. So, 293, going to be awesome. Very excited for it. Hopefully we'll hear more about the main event in the next coming weeks. After that, 294, like I was mentioning before, talking about Volkanovski versus Ilya because of Islam and Charles being booked now, and Volk obviously can't get Islam for the next fight. Chimaev versus Costa is also on that event, and we waited. We waited so long to hear, even just to hear, not even to have a confirmation, but just to hear that something was being made in the works. And we finally have Chimaev versus Costa. Let's see if they pull out. I hope not. Fingers crossed, touch wood, but that fight will be so dope. We've been waiting for the return of Boars for so long. Costa also, we've been waiting for him to come back for a while. There's been a bunch of Costa fights that were meant to happen that didn't happen in the last couple of years. So hopefully this one goes through, and it's at middleweight. It's Chimaev's debut at middleweight, So hopefully this can help the middleweight rankings, because I believe, only to add to the fuckery of this division, Chimaev and Costa have been told, obviously not by the UFC, and it hasn't been announced, maybe by their internal UFC like contacts, but not by like big boss man Dana did not say this. But it's a number one contenders match at middleweight, after we already have Dricus du Plessis as the number one contender and Robert Whittaker waiting below that. Granted, probably not going to get an easy fight. And then below that, we have Sean Strickland, who was just told he could fight, and now is not going to get to fight. And below that, we have Jared Cannonier, who is waiting for a fight and might be getting the fight. And then below that, we have Marvin Vettori, who is also looking to get another title shot. Now, obviously, a couple of those guys aren't really in the conversation right now, but there's at least 3 or 4 of them that are. And that's way too many people to have in the conversation when you're trying to throw Chimaev and Costa as possibilities in there as well. If Costa wins this, bit different story, because he's ranked number 7. He might not get the boost that's enough to get him a title fight next, but if he beats Chimaev and then wins his next fight against another guy, maybe he will. However, if Chimaev wins, Chimaev gets a title shot. Tell me how that works. Not that he doesn't deserve it, but tell me how they're meant to sort that out. 4 people waiting in line for Izzy. What if Izzy loses? We have to give Izzy a rematch. He's a reigning champion. He needs to be given an immediate rematch if he loses. So what, we're gonna have Izzy rematch Cannonier. Say Izzy loses to Cannonier. We're having him rematch Cannonier. And what, DDP waits again? And Strickland is still waiting. And Whittaker is still waiting. Chimaev's still waiting. What are you going to do? Something has to change. Someone has to be told no. You can't have your cake and eat it. They've told too many people just to get them out of their face. They've said, yes, 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 go fight this guy. Go fight this guy. We'll give you title. Yes, just do it. Win. Win the fight. He might not get a shot, but you'll get a shot. Win the fight. What do you do when you've got 4 people waiting in line and they're all in their late 30s? A couple of them aren't, but they're in their late 30s. They're on timers. They've only got so long to be in this game for. So does Izzy. And you think there's not going to be more contenders building up in that period of time? So what's going to happen? I don't know. But I want to know. And I'm sure in the next couple of weeks, we'll start to get leaks of what could be the case. Now, Volk and Ilya. Man, what a fight, right? We saw Josh Emmett versus Ilya, and we saw Yair versus Josh Emmett. Yair finished Josh Emmett, which is something that Ilya couldn't do. But Ilya brutalized Josh Emmett and took a minimal damage, which is not something that Yair couldn't do, but it's not what Yair did. Which is more impressive is the question I ask you, because I don't know. They're both incredibly impressive. It's not like one of them is just no one cares. They're both incredibly impressive performances, but which one tops the other? Because if Topuria tops Yair in his performance against Josh Emmett, is that because Josh Emmett was on a losing streak? If it's not, does that mean that Topuria has a better chance against Volk? Or, because Topuria couldn't finish Emmett, does that mean that he was worse than Yair? And we saw Yair get, the floor was wiped. Volk wiped the floor with Yair. So what happens if we put Topuria in there? Does it only go 1 round? It's interesting. So far, no one can hold a candle to Volk. We've had blitzes and close finishes, such as the Ortega getting him in a headlock and whatnot. But no one's gotten, at least not in the featherweight division, aside from Makhachev, no one has tested Volkanovski's skill in that division. Not even Max Holloway. The first couple fights, sure, but God, that third fight was brutal. So, what happens when Volk beats Topuria and then goes on to become double champ? Who fights in the featherweight division? Who do we even have? Is Volk even going to stay in the featherweight division at that point? He should, for the sake of having a great title reign. But is this going to be John Jones too? Are we going to start just throwing tomato cans at him because we don't have anyone that's really even shown that they can beat him? Not only do we not think they can beat him, but we are not giving Volk opponents... but we weren't giving John Jones opponents that we even thought were that much of a threat to him sometimes. It's just the next guy on the list. So, featherweight division currently is filled with a couple of guys that are really good. And Volk has fought most of them already. So, who's next? After Topuria and after Islam. This is looking into the future a lot. But say those two things happen, which I think they will. Bias, obviously, but I'm open to argument against it. But if it does happen, who's next? Who? I don't know. I haven't got a clue. Have a look at the featherweight rankings. Ready? If you look at your top 5 featherweights: Holloway, Yair, Ortega, Ilia Topuria, Arnold Allen. Topuria is next. Allen just lost to Holloway. Do we just start feeding Volk people that Holloway's already beaten? Because I don't... do we just throw Calvin Kattar in there? Do we throw Josh Emmett in there, even though these guys lost to people that Volk's already beaten? Do we put Evliov in there next? Do you start taking people from down... granted, by this point in time, they might be higher in the rankings. But do you start going down to your number 6, 7, and 8s and really try and actually choose, people that you just... Is this going to become another middleweight situation where Adesanya's kind of wiped the floor with a lot of the division? So is Volk. And it's getting close to being kind of empty. So what do you do then? You can't make him move division. But at the same time, you also can't make skilled fighters appear in a division. So, I think we have to hope that contenders rise and that someone gives Volk a bigger challenge. Otherwise, he might retire champion of the featherweight division. Other divisions, I'm not so sure. Lightweight obviously is tougher. Islam's was a challenge, and he will be a challenge again. And if Volk was to be double champion, there would be a lot of challenges ahead of him. Oliveira is a tough challenge. Dustin Poirier is a tough challenge. Justin Gaethje is a tough challenge. Even Beneil Dariush is a tough challenge. Michael Chandler's a tough challenge. Rafael Fiziev is a tough challenge. We'll have to wait and see. Moving on. But staying in the same group of people. I want to talk about people that I think are being rushed to the top of the divisions. I'll end it off here, but I think it's an interesting conversation to have because the organization benefits a lot from these young fighters that come into the division with unbeaten records, something to prove, people to arc up against to prove that too. Are they being rushed? Is it too soon? Is Topuria ready? Is Ian Gary ready? Is Bo Nickel ready? Just because these guys are young and undefeated and have all the time in the world to improve does not mean that they will improve if you feed them to the fucking dogs. If you throw these kids, these 25, 26, 27-year-olds, if you throw them into title fights, some people benefit hugely from being thrown into the doghouse when they're a young fighter, and it makes them into an absolute dog. Other people never recover. Careers ended because of a title fight that they weren't ready for. Even if they didn't take a bludgeoning from it and lose confidence or have a level of CTE involved. Some people just don't know what to do after a loss like that, especially when they're undefeated fighters. And if your first ever loss is in the biggest opportunity you've ever been given, obviously your first loss will be at the biggest opportunity because each fight is going to be a bigger and bigger opportunity. But if your first loss is your first title fight and it's you're 10-0, you're 11-0, you're so confident, you're 27 years old, you come into this title fight and you put up a decent fight, but you win 1 round out of 4 and you get finished. Even say you get finished in your own game. Say you're a submission artist, you get submitted. What some people do not recover. So, Bo Nickel, Ian Gary, and Ilya Topuria. There's a couple others as well, young guys with good records that are coming into the organization. But specifically those 3, because they're great examples. Is it too soon? I think it's possible. But at the same time, man, do we have some prospects in this division, in this organization, sorry. The amount of guys, regardless of talking about guys that haven't lost, because that's the story I'm talking about. These guys that are young and have great records, right? But there's plenty of young fighters that don't have these stupid records, like 14-0, 16-0, whatever it is. They don't have those crazy records that they're 14-5, you know? They can still beat the champion. The numbers don't make fights. The skills do. The styles do. Rankings choose fights, okay? But records don't. You can be 30-0, but if you can't beat the number 7 ranked guy, what's the fucking point? Do you understand what I like? It's not much of an issue in MMA, of like the whole padded records deal, as much as it is in boxing. But it does happen. It does still happen. You see, it won't be their entire career, but maybe some guy that's 21-2, those 2 losses were his first 2 fights in the UFC. He came in 19-0, and now he's gone 2-2. Do you know how often that happens? How many guys come into the UFC undefeated? I bet a lot more than leave undefeated. A lot more. And I bet a lot more people that come in undefeated leave losing more than they won. Do you know how many people in this came into this game like 7-0, something like that? Happens all the time. Happens to the guys that have been here for 10 years. When they got here, they were 8-0, they were 6-0. And now they're 17-4. Like, granted, that's what, 9 wins and 4 losses? That's not terrible. But it's not 7 wins per loss, which is what 7-0 would entail, right? Even if you'd have no losses, you would assume that you have 7 wins to each loss. And now you're 17-4. It's just what happens when you get put with this level of competition. And I think the numbers are looked at too much. They're looked at too much. Bo Nickel's not necessarily a great example of that because he has a very small record. So that is more of just a skill output that we're considering him for a title fight because of. But I just don't know, man. They're very young. They don't have a lot of experience. Let them get the experience. Topuria's getting close. I think it is quite soon to be giving him Volkanovski already. 1 more fight, 2 more maybe. But they look at that number, they see that 14-0, and they think he must be next. He must. Who else? This guy? Is this guy above him? Arnold Allen, 19-2. He's not undefeated. Why would we consider him? Maybe because he went toe-to-toe with Max Holloway? Maybe. No. You want the guy who beat the dude that lost to the interim champion that just got wiped the floor with. That's what you think is the best matchup? I think Topuria's got the most skill in the featherweight top. I'd like to say 10, but it could be 6, 7, 8. You know, there might be some guy down at 9, 10 that I'm not well enough versed on to know what a come up he's on. I think Topuria is the next best thing. I just don't think it should be happening yet. I think with Holloway sitting at the top, just sitting there, picking off all these contenders down at the bottom, flicking them off like bugs on the ladder, just pop, pop, climb up again, try again. You're ruining that division. And I love Max Holloway, and I hate that they are trying to force him out of a division that he was a champion in. But at this point, what do you do? What do you do? You tell me. Let me know in the comments. I spoke about a lot of things, but specifically, let me know in the comments what you think about that. Because that's what I want to hear the most about. I want to hear about what you guys think of the titles that are in contention with the light heavyweight, lightweight, and middleweight, with the amount of people that we have listed as contenders. And I want to hear what you think about people being pushed to the top too soon, because I think it's happening a lot. And I think all we're doing is setting ourselves up for disappointment with these guys that do have the talent to be entertainers, to be top level guys. But you gotta let it brew. You have to let them grow. They're not even in their prime yet. They're not in their prime age in terms of their physicality. Like a 26-year-old, do you know how much better they could be at this sport by the time they're 30? Now, obviously, you could say that it doesn't matter, because if they can beat them at 26, then it doesn't matter how good they are at 30, because they can already beat the guy. Sure. But are you sure? Because I'm not. Let me know what you guys think. Thank you for tuning in to this episode of the Mixed Martial Pod. It's going to be an interesting weekend. I'm very excited. Expect some videos to come out, reactions. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next episode. See ya.